Hey, PreSales Collective, it's your host, James Kaikis, and today I have the honor and privilege to be joined by Mattie Stremic, Head of Programming for PreSales Academy, and Kevin Mefford, Head of Community for PreSales Collective. The topic of today's episode is Meet the Team. I get to work with Kevin and Mattie every single day, and the impact that they have both made in their short time working for the PreSales Collective and PreSales Academy is incredible. And so I want to use this opportunity for the community to get to know Kevin and Mattie, who they are, their backgrounds, their passions, what their motivations are, and some of their goals in their role. As we continue to grow PreSales Collective and PreSales Academy, it is important for the community to get to know our people. I really hope you liked today's episode. Enjoy. Mattie and Kevin, welcome to the PreSales Podcast. How are you both doing today?
Doing great, James. Thank you so much for having us on today.
Yeah, having a great day, James. Thanks for the opportunity.
The three of us talk all the time, and it's so great for me to get to know the two of you, but I really want the rest of the community to continue to get to know who Mattie and Kevin are, because both of you are such critical pieces to the PreSales Collective, and Kevin's obviously been here a little bit longer than you have, Mattie. However, the impact that both of you are going to make on the community is going to be amazing. We've already seen it in just a short window of both of you being on board. I really want people to get to know the two of you, who you are, just like Eugene and I know the two of you, and you guys both know each other. Let's start by talking about the pre-sales journey. So Kevin, can you talk to us about your pre-sales journey? Like, what got you to where you are today?
Well, like so many of us, I fell into it. I had been working in professional services. I was leading a services delivery team at the time when my company founders came and said, hey, we need somebody technical that can come along on some of these sales calls. And you seem to be able to do that. Why don't you come along? That's where I started. That led to then more of a hybrid role where I was doing a lot of pre-sales, but was still doing service delivery and training and customer success. And then eventually landed in a dedicated pre-sales role and have been doing that for the last several years before I came over to the PreSales Collective. So then in my most recent role at Medallia, I was there for almost 7 years, working with a variety of clients. I led a team for a little while. I worked in different verticals, but very much in that dedicated pre-sales advisor role, helping out with clients, working with sales teams. I dabbled in a lot of pieces and was really looking for that next change. And that's really what led me to the PreSales Collective. So when I saw the option here for the head of community, it just seemed like a great natural fit for me to take all of my experience in pre-sales and do something a little bit different with it.
I really appreciate that journey. And we'll dive into a little bit more about what made you decide to come work for PreSales Collective full time. But I will say, from my perspective, we had a lot of really qualified candidates who raised their hand for that head of community role. But hiring you as someone who was in role, had the experience, knew the day-to-day challenges, became a no-brainer for us. So it's awesome to hear your journey, and we're glad to have you as part of the PreSales Collective. Mattie, tell us about your pre-sales journey.
Yeah. So funny enough, Kevin mentioned that he was kind of the technical person and then got pulled into an SE role. And I'm kind of the flip side. I was in HR. I pursued a master's in industrial and organizational psychology, which is kind of like strategic HR, and was very much a HR program manager, really into that profession when I was approached because my organization realized they had a gap on the sales team and they needed someone to do demos. And they were like, who could possibly fill this role? And they were like, well, Mattie can present. She's good at presenting, so I'm sure she can figure out the technical stuff. So then I got brought on as a sales engineer at Claris Health, and that's where I learned about pre-sales. I got connected to the PreSales Collective. I joined our virtual coffee chats. I actually got connected with Yuji on the first coffee chat that I ever had, and actually really fell in love with the career and just how engaging it was to work with clients, getting to problem solve, and knew instantly I wanted to be in the pre-sales world for a really long time.
I have to give you some credit because you were in a pre-sales role just a short time when you joined the PreSales Academy. And I love the operating transparency. Eugene and I had a conversation and I was like, hey, I don't think Mattie's actually eligible for the Academy because she's been in the role for 2 or 3 months. And Eugene was like, well, she's really persistent and she was just kind of thrown into the role without a lot of experience. So I think she'll benefit from PreSales Academy. And so here we are.
Yeah, right. So when I actually started following the PreSales Collective and like looking at the resources there, that's when you all launched the PreSales Academy. And I realized all the topics and the competencies that students were going to develop was everything that I wish I had when I had first started the role. So I did pester Yuji a lot about the possibility of me joining, even though I didn't fit the kind of ideal student criteria.
Yeah, I love that, Mattie. It's amazing to see that journey, even virtual coffee with Yuji for the first time. So I'm curious, during your academy process, what made you decide, well, I'm really enjoying this pre-sales role. I don't want to go into a dedicated sales engineering role, but I want to actually go work for PreSales Academy. What happened there? When was that light bulb moment for you?
That's a great question. It's funny because someone recently asked me, did I join the academy with the goal of joining the PreSales Collective? And honestly, I had no idea that the opportunity even existed. And so when I joined the academy, my intention was just to grow as a sales engineer and learn more about best practices. But then I started working with Yuji, and I actually kind of worked with him in a volunteer capacity while I was also going through the program. And I started to get exposure to just this amazing leadership and vision by both you and Yuji. And I realized that there was something really incredible going on here. And I just instantly started thinking about how could I get involved long term? How can I make Yuji my mentor? And really realizing that there is a crucial and amazing mission for the Academy and what we're doing at PreSales Collective. And I knew I wanted to be a part of that.
From my perspective, you going through the program firsthand without the intention of joining PreSales Collective gives you this experience that you get to see what it was like to be a student. And then joining on the team now, you get to utilize that experience to better the program. So I look at that as a multiplier effect. How do you feel about that? Like going through the program, does that actually feel like you can make a bigger impact and a bigger difference in what the Academy looks like 2022 and in the future?
Absolutely. So going through the program as a student, not knowing that I'd, work for the PreSales Collective after, I actually got to experience what it was like to connect with the cohort, to go through those demo role plays and to get exposure to all of the content. And I also had kind of a unique lens because I was a solutions consultant at the same time. And so I was able to kind of see what's working, what's resonating, and kind of figure out maybe what's not hitting home. And I think that kind of insight and actually going through the program allows me to really add value when it comes to enhancing the program, figuring out what we can add. And Yuji and I were even meeting yesterday, and I was mentioning, we need a real life example here. We need someone to share a story here because just talking about, technical validation sometimes isn't going to hit home if people aren't hearing, an actual example with a client and getting that real life story. So I think that it's going to add a ton of value having gone through the program myself.
I agree, Mattie. We're so happy to have you involved and can't wait to see the impact that you make. And it's so funny because your story is you got involved in the Academy. You ended up joining PreSales Collective. Kevin has a bit of a similar story, right? That Kevin was involved in our local Austin group and then was a volunteer at demo days. And we worked pretty closely together. And then he decided to raise his hand when we had a head of community role open. I think the best part for myself, just like your experience, Mattie, is I had seen Kevin's work firsthand. We had worked hand in hand for a couple months. So we had that continuity there. Kevin, what made you raise your hand, say, hey, I want to sign up for head of community?
Well, part of it, I'll back up to just why I joined the PreSales Collective in the first place. I've worked remotely for a really long time at various companies. So when I had a chance of, here's a way I can connect with other pre-sales professionals, getting to know people in the Austin community, that's what led me to the PSC to begin with. And then being a volunteer as one of the Austin chapter leads. And then when the demo days competition came along, I love to be involved. I love planning events. I love getting things together. And so when I saw the posting for head of community, it was really interesting to me. I had very much hit that point in my career where I was looking at, all right, what comes next? Where do I move from here? And so I had been looking at different ideas, trying to think through, all right, what is my next step? What's really going to keep me invigorated in my career? And I kept seeing the posting and it kept rattling around in my head of, okay, that's not really my path. That's not really kind of the next step and where I should be going. but it's really intriguing. I really like the work that you and Yuji have been doing with the PreSales Collective. Obviously, had gotten to know quite a few of the people involved. So I knew what a great community it was. And so I just really kept going back and forth. And finally, one night, I was like, you know what? I should just do it. I should reach out to James just to float this idea, not knowing how it will be received. Obviously, having that of, well, are you looking for somebody early career? Are you really looking for a professional event planner? And so it was great having that first conversation with you on, oh, actually, what are you looking for in that role? And, that hybrid between someone coming from the industry, really knowing pre-sales and all of the pieces that we fight every day, being able to bring that along with my volunteer experience that I've done in my personal life was really appealing to me. And that's what really led me into that role to begin with.
I love that perspective, and thanks for sharing it, because when you raised your hand, I was like, oh, wow, Kevin Mefford just raised his hand for head of community. I was like, this is the perfect person that we are looking for, because you had the pre-sales experience, because you mentioned volunteer experience outside of pre-sales and outside the PreSales Collective, that you've done some of this work. And I think you've done a tremendous job hitting the ground running and seeing behind the scenes of what happens around PreSales Collective and really helping it grow and expand. So I love all the work that you've done and really appreciate you coming on board, and excited to see that you're going to actually have a team here soon, that we're hiring someone to work on the events team with you. Pretty crazy, right?
It is. I'm very excited about the prospects and love everything that I've been through so far.
So Kevin, what has been your favorite part about the job?
I would really say it's two things. So first off is getting back out into the community, starting to host some in-person events. I've had the pleasure of attending, getting to meet people face to face and having that experience after what we've been through in the last year and a half, where people are saying, hey, I've missed this. I haven't been doing functions again. It's so great that you guys are putting that on. So that's been a big part. The other piece for me has actually been part of my work with the PreSales Leadership Collective and just sitting in on our ongoing leadership roundtables. I feel like I've learned more in the last few months than in probably half of my career. And I've had some fantastic pre-sales leaders in my past. I've learned a ton. I don't want to diminish that at all. But just seeing that concentration of, oh, here are 10, 15 people that are all leaders at top companies getting together, brainstorming through ideas. It's been a great education piece that I've just loved seeing that come together and watching people share what they're learning in their roles.
That's great, Kevin. And it's so funny that you say that, because the Leadership Collective and sitting on those events of some of the people that are at the best companies in the world and at the top of their position and hearing how they approach things, you're right. Like, we get to absorb that. And sometimes I like to joke with people that I'm in a bit of la la land at PreSales Collective now, because I'm talking to some of the best companies in the world and understanding what they're doing, the challenges they're solving, the problems that they're facing. And we get to hear that across, right? And it's not just in North America. We get to hear it in Europe and Asia Pacific. And it's such a learning mechanism, right? That is maybe one of the unintended benefits of the role.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things of, even if you work for a great company, you have a great team of leaders within that, you're still only hearing from yourself. So that cross-pollination of hearing, oh, here are 20 companies that are facing that, and learning all of those different perspectives, I think is one of the greatest things about the PreSales Collective overall.
I agree. One of the things that I always talk about is when you get outside your four walls is where innovation happens, because you either realize what you're doing is right, or you realize that maybe there's a better way of doing it. And so I think we hear a lot of that, which is wonderful. But Kevin, let me ask, what has been the biggest surprise in the role so far?
It's hard to pin this down, but I think for me, the biggest surprise has really just been how much you and Yuji have been superhuman in what you've produced so far. Mattie, we have giant shoes to fill. So first piece of advice, don't ever feel bad about asking for help. Because when I came in and looked at just how much was going into all of these webinars and all of the content and all of the things that PreSales Collective is producing, it amazes me still that you and Yuji have put together over the last 18 months. And so for me, the biggest surprise has just been how much is going into that. And my other piece of advice, Mattie, is make sure you get really strong on your project management. Keep that running task list, because there's so many moving pieces. And as we're looking to scale things up, that's only going to increase. So it's been surprising to me just how much of that foundation was built and how well put together it was, but then also how much is going into it going forward.
I think one of the things that we learned a lot was when PreSales Collective started, both Eugene and I had full-time jobs, and it just started growing and growing and growing. And it got to a point where we were both working 24/7 because when we finished our regular day job, we were working on PreSales Collective. And actually, when you're that busy, you realize that you have to get really efficient. And so we created a lot of processes that were repeatable so that we could continue to run things at scale. And as you mentioned, the momentum of the community just continued to grow. And so I think we got to a point where we're like, all right, this isn't sustainable for 2 people anymore. And even at 4, it's still not sustainable. I appreciate that. And good advice to Mattie. One of the things that I will say too is maybe the blessing and the curse of PreSales Collective is that we are a global community. So it is 24/7. I tell people all the time, when I wake up, the first thing I do when I wake up is check my Slack because there's a lot of conversations happening with our European counterparts or a lot of messages. And when I go to bed, it's the APJ group is getting up and active. And I think that is one of the challenges of our role is making sure that we can maintain that quality and that consistency and that member experience 24/7. So mix that with the project management and all the moving pieces. It's been fun. We've all grown and learned a lot. That's for sure.
What PreSales does best.
That is it right there, Kevin. Mattie, I'm curious. We talked a little bit about you coming on and already making some advice and making some awesome changes in terms of what should be done with PreSales Academy. But what are some of your goals for 2022 and what are you hoping to accomplish as a member of the team?
For 2022, I feel like we have really big goals, which is really exciting. I like to boil it down to 3 core areas that we're really focusing and honing on. The first is elevating the program. And so that's a little bit about what we already talked about is looking at our existing program and figuring out how can we increase the quality? How can we foster greater community within the cohort? And how can we do more and even add more materials, more content where we realize maybe we need a little bit more content or maybe we need to take away content. So really looking at how do we refine the program, increase the quality. The second, and probably one of the most important, it has to do with expanding the program. And so we want to increase the amount of volume of students that we can put through our programs and help transition into pre-sales careers. A lot of that looks like increasing the amount of volume that we can accommodate. And so in part, that was a little bit into the decision into, I think, hiring me, adding me to the team, and a little bit more about what we'll do in the next year to accommodate more students. And also looking at our recruitment methods. I think we're kind of unique in that we don't want just the same makeup that we actually see in the profession. We're trying to be very intentional about accessing people from all different professional backgrounds and then empowering them through the program. And so it's not just kind of throwing a net, hoping it works out, we'll take whoever. It's that we're being very intentional because we want to create a more diverse and inclusive future in tech. And so that's really the mission of the PSA. And so that's a really key goal here as we kind of look to accommodate more students. And then the third piece has to do also looking at scaling. So as we bring on more students, we also want to make sure that the quality isn't reduced, that they're still getting that one-on-one attention from us and that they're still getting all the resources that they need. And it doesn't just turn into we're, pushing so many students to the program that we can't offer that same level of quality and attention that we have in the past. So we're also looking at different scaling methods to ensure that we can offer that as well.
Wow, Mattie, that is so well said. I love how you articulated that. I think elevating the program is something I've already seen you do, from your presentation to, hey, I want this job, to actually some of the work you've done in the last couple of weeks. And I think it's great that I think the first program was definitely a success and the feedback has seen that. But you're right. It's just the small tweaks. I sound like a broken record, right? When I talk about details of the difference between good and great, right? And when you compound those and put them together, it really allows us to improve the experience and have it stand out. And so I've already seen that in work. Well, it's so interesting that you bring up expanding the program, because I think this is the one thing I don't feel people understand, is that just because we have this program doesn't mean that we can include as many people as possible without deteriorating the quality. the mentorship and the one-on-one and the coaching, because there are a lot of programs that already exist out there for other professions that are a volume game. And these people go through the program and they don't learn anything. And then they come to us to say, hey, I went through this technical training course and I didn't learn anything. Can I go through PreSales Academy? I think we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I really love that you brought up the focus and emphasis on the recruiting methods. I've already seen some of the partnership conversations that you've had to bring in a new type of candidate pool into PreSales Academy, which then folds into PreSales Collective and helps build the diversity in the profession. For expanding the program, what is something that you really, really want to see happen in the next 6 months?
So as far as expanding the program, our next cohort will probably have around 16 students, kind of similar to what we had in our last cohort. But then from there, we're looking at actually doubling the volume. So pretty quickly within the next year, we're actually going to see a lot more students, which means we're going to have a lot more students also entering the profession.
I've been pretty adamant about this, that I really want PreSales Academy to continue to be a global organization, but there are a lot of intricacies in terms of operating in different countries and recruiting in different countries. So I am really excited to see the growth of PreSales Academy. And so, Kevin, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are some of your goals for 2022?
For me, the theme of my 2022 is do more. We have a very aggressive schedule on webinars, online content, roundtable. So finding ways to pull that out. And then, of course, just more engagement with our community, getting more connections between people, whether it's on Slack, whether it's at our in-person events. And finally, really doing more of helping people elevate their own roles and their own organizations. One of the core missions of the PreSales Collective is to elevate the role of pre-sales. Part of my role as the head of community is helping people elevate themselves, whether that's being a guest in a webinar, serving as a panelist, helping us with content, but it's helping people find ways to broadcast their knowledge and elevate the entire profession through that.
From day one, we wanted to make sure that PreSales Collective was a community. It wasn't this online website where you went and just absorbed content, but you build real relationships and connections. And you did mention that. What are some ways you want to build and foster those connections in 2022 that maybe we didn't do or did differently in 2021?
We've done a very good job of organic growth to this point. So a lot of organic connections and trying to find more ways to help people build relationships than maybe what we've done so far. So some of that may be, are there different ways that we can foster engagement within Slack, within the online communities that we have? I've said it a few times, we're doing more in-person events. Obviously, where that's safe and still possible around the world. It's finding more ways to people have those one-on-one connections and help each other, whereas we've maybe left that a little bit open to this point. We're trying to find more ways of how can we direct that and how can we drive more of that connection than what we're doing today.
Great point, Kevin. And I think we are in this hybrid workplace. And when we first started PreSales Collective, we had a goal and intention of building an online community, but having a lot of in-person events because we thought the pandemic would be 3 months long. Here we are entering in 2022 into this new space that just looks like it's going to continue. But for us, I think the conversations that you and I have had is how do we continue to build connection beyond just the virtual coffees or the in-person events? And what I have learned especially is that I think I anticipated that more people would join online events at all times. You would join the webinars, you'd be active on those, and we've had great attendance. However, everyone is doing that now. And a lot of times our jobs still stay very busy. So people don't have as much time during their 9 to 5. And so what are ways that we can allow for that connection building to happen virtually outside of maybe just digesting on a webinar? So I'm excited to some of the programs that we're going to end up releasing. A lot of people have asked us about mentorship and coaching and those types of aspects. So I am excited to see those things come to fruition in 2022 and 2023. So, Mattie, let's talk about some advice. There's some people listening that are not in this profession. They want to get into pre-sales. They want to make the leap, but maybe they're having some hesitation. What advice do you have for those people?
I know exactly what that's like because when I was considering the role in pre-sales and to become a sales engineer, first of all, I'd never heard of it before. And second of all, I was terrified because I wasn't a technical person. And I think changing careers in general and also changing careers to become a pre-sales consultant or sales engineer, I think takes a lot of courage. Whether you're already technical and maybe you need to brush up on your people and presentation skills, or you need to build more of that technical knowledge, I think it takes a lot of work and a lot of commitment. So it's not an easy task, but it's so worth it. And I would encourage anyone that's considering it, if you want to have a job, where you hate your life every single day working that boring 9 to 5, this is an incredible career where you're going to be constantly solving problems. You're going to be constantly engaged, and you're also going to make a lot of money. So I would encourage anyone, if you're thinking, maybe this isn't right for me, or maybe I can't do it. Maybe you're a woman and never saw yourself in a role that had the word engineer in it. I would encourage you to take that kind of leap of faith and believe in yourself and take hold of the resources that are available to you through the PreSales Collective, and maybe even give the PreSales Academy a chance. But it's so worth it. It just takes a little bit of courage and a lot of dedication.
Love it, Mattie. Great examples as well. I really appreciate that. So Kevin, we have a lot of people who reach out to us who say, I'd love to see a podcast on this topic or a webinar on this topic. What advice do you have for people who want to get more engaged with PreSales Collective?
The first level is hey, come join our Slack community, post about it, ask your questions, get pieces out. That's the simple answer. The other big piece, though, if you really want to help drive some of that content, go online, PreSalesCollective.com/contribute. We have a lot of different ways, whether you would like to help write blog articles, whether you have podcast topic ideas, or you would like to be a guest. The same with webinars. If you have topic suggestions, or, hey, here's someone that I met recently that you should definitely have on a webinar. Here's a great topic. We're always looking for people to help out. The strength of this organization is the volunteers and the people that are helping contribute that content. So we're always looking for people to jump in, raise their hand, and help us with ideas, with actually delivering that.
Thank you. And you know what? Thank you so much for leading that project as well. I said this at the Exec Summit, is that PreSales Collective is a platform to highlight the amazing work being done by amazing pre-sales professionals. And I think that's the biggest thing that we want to move to in this new contribute model that you're leading, is that there are so many people that are learning from great people, or have an opinion, or want to share that opinion or share their expertise. Let's give them that opportunity. And so we'll be accepting and collecting all of those ideas, all of that info. And again, we say this all the time, is PreSales Collective and what we do and PreSales Collective programs and content is really driven by the community. It's what do we hear from the community? What are we hearing in our conversations? What do people need? And that's where we put that out. So I think this is a great mechanism, and I really appreciate you leading that, Kevin. Again, PreSalesCollective.com/contribute. Very exciting plan for 2022.
One thing I really want to get across is when we ask people to contribute, I'll talk to people and they'll say, well, but I'm not really a subject matter expert in that. I'm not really the person that can tell people what to think. And that's not what we're looking for. We're not looking for expertise are going to blare their opinions and tell us that's the law. We want people that have opinions, that have been through this experience and want to share that out, give their advice, relate their past to other people, and bring that out to the community. That's all we're looking for. We're not necessarily looking for an expert or, hey, I've led a team of 500, so I know everything that's going on. We want those individual contributors. We want people that have lived this and want to help other people, like Mattie and the PreSales Academy, folks that are just starting out, or that other perspective that may be out there that in your company, you do it one way, but other people are doing it a different way. We want to hear from all of that. We want to get all of those voices heard across the pre-sales world.
Kevin, so well said. Thanks for adding that. Kevin and Mattie, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate both of you joining me on the podcast. I can't thank the two of you enough for, one, taking a chance and joining PreSales Collective and PreSales Academy early on, employees number 3 and 4. But we have a very exciting path ahead of us. And the two of you have just been amazing fits to the company and have made impacts since day one. So thank you again, both, so much for your work. And I'm so excited to see where the future takes us.
Thanks so much, James. It's a joy and a privilege to be a part of the team.
Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure. The team is fantastic, and I'm so excited to see where we grow from here.
Me too. See you next time. All right, PreSales Collective, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. It's so great getting to know Kevin and Mattie. From Kevin's perspective, he was in the field working as a solutions engineer for years, even in leadership capacity, and he was volunteering with the local Austin group. He also volunteered with demo days, and so we got an opportunity to work very closely together. And so when the role opened and Kevin raised his hand, as I mentioned, I was super excited because I knew he was the perfect fit for the job. He was able to make that transition very easily and hit the ground running within the PreSales Collective. And the same for Mattie. For Mattie, she connected with Yuji on her first virtual coffee. That was a story that I just recently learned. And hearing that is just the power of the community. Mattie then joined PreSales Academy and was going through the academy and asked Yuji for some advice on a potential opportunity. And the rest is history. And now she's our head of programming. And so it's so wonderful to even see this network effect happen within our own organization, within our own community. And these individuals who are putting energy and effort into making the pre-sales profession a better place and joining us as full-time employees. So I really hope that you've had a great opportunity to meet them. Please reach out to them in Slack, introduce yourself, add them on LinkedIn. It's so important for us to get to know the members of the PreSales Collective and get to know the pre-sales community at large. So if you have any thoughts, questions, concerns, advice, please reach out to both Kevin and Mattie as they're both willing to help. If you're interested in getting involved with PreSales Academy, you can go to the website and fill out the volunteer or the company form or email info@presalesacademy.com. Or if you want to contribute with the PreSales Collective, go to presalescollective.com/contribute and fill out the forms that we have there. We'd love to have you on a blog, podcast, webinar, have you contributing to make the pre-sales world a better place. All right, PreSales Collective, as always, I will see you next week.